So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the India Economic Summit's session on skilling, very appropriately termed Get Up, Skill Up. The first Get Up clearly is designed to make us think that we are perhaps not as awake as we should be on the skilling challenge that India faces. I'm delighted to be here. My name is Shekhar Shah. I'll be the moderator of this session. I'm the head of one of India's largest economic think tanks, NCAER. May I request everybody to turn off their cell phones, please? Just either turn them off or make them silent. And the producers, since they have a ring of cameras around us, have requested that people not get up during the session. Otherwise, they might be blocking a shot, and they don't want that. So 2 cautions to you, please. I'm delighted to be here and delighted to have a very distinguished panel with me to talk about the challenges India faces in skilling. To my right is Manish Sisodia, Deputy Chief Minister of Delhi, ardent activist, somebody who started his professional life in journalism with ZTV and with All India Radio, and he is passionate about education as the foundation for a just, transparent, and corruption-free society.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm also delighted to have Shikha Sharma, CEO and MD of Axis Bank, one of India's leading private sector banks. She's led the bank since 2009. Prior to that, 30 years, I think, with ICICI, India's largest private sector bank. And she's passionate about the future of jobs in both financial services and how financial services can leverage entrepreneurship, startups, and other ways of creating more jobs in the country. Sergio Picarelli, on my right, is the head of several different countries, including Italy and parts of Asia and India, of the Adecco group, the world's largest HR solution provider, with experience in over 65 countries, and we are very pleased to have Sergio here. To my left is Anant Narayan, CEO of Myntra.com, India's largest e-commerce platform for fashion and lifestyle products. And to my right, extreme right, is Akshay Kothari, MD of LinkedIn. He is the inventor of Pulse, which he did when he was a student at Stanford in electrical engineering, with a nice buyout by LinkedIn, which now puts him in a very different entrepreneurship space. So I'm absolutely delighted to have this distinguished panel. What I'm going to do is request my colleagues to give me a sense of how India should face up to the challenge. And the challenge, very briefly put, is 250 million young people coming into the labor force in about 4 to 5 years. We expect to have to generate 1 million jobs a month for the next 30 years. India will have a working age population of 1 billion by 2050, which is the world's largest labor force that we have seen, larger than China's. And even in 2100, we will be a workforce of 750 million people. So this is a tremendous opportunity, but also a tremendous challenge, because currently we are not equipped to produce the kinds of jobs that can actually productively employ these people. So we have a very large challenge ahead of us, but a tremendous potential to gain the dividend from what we often call the demographic transition in India's population. Most countries in the world that have developed rapidly have done so only when they have made use of this demographic dividend. So with that background and the challenge that we face, I'm going to turn to each of our panelists to give their sense of what are the skills that we need for this future and how are we going to acquire them. Manish Sisodia.
Oh, you're starting with me. Thank you. मैं हिंदी में सोचता हूँ तो थोड़ा हिंदी में बात रखने की कोशिश करूँगा मिक्स करके. स्किल एंड यू सेड स्किल का फ्यूचर क्या है भारत में. तो सबसे पहले तो हमें सोचना पड़ेगा कि स्किल की हमको हिंदुस्तान में समझ कितनी है. अभी हमें प्रॉब्लम क्या है कि स्किल, आई एम सॉरी those who can't understand in Hindi because I think in Hindi, so I'll try to express myself. Maybe Shekhar can help in summarizing. हम लोग जब स्किल पे बात करते हैं तो सबसे बड़ी प्रॉब्लम है कि जो बहुत पढ़े लिखे, बहुत ज़्यादा स्किल पे बात करने वाले हम सब लोग हैं, हम सब लोग कन्फाइंड हैं। स्किल मतलब कारपेंटर, स्किल मतलब वेल्डिंग। और मज़े की बात देखिए कि जब हमने देश में सचिन तेंदुलकर जैसे ब्रांड को यूज़ करके स्किल इंडिया का ऐड बनाया, तो हमने क्या ऐड बनाया, कौन से स्किल को प्रमोट किया? कारपेंटर। आई एम नॉट डिफेमिंग और डिमीनिंग एनीथिंग, लेकिन अगर हम ये सोचते हैं कि स्किल इंडिया का फ्यूचर है, स्किल हमें अपने 10th क्लास या 12th क्लास से निकलने वाले हर बच्चे के अंदर कोई ना कोई स्किल डालना है, सो वी कांट आस्क ईच एंड एवरी पेरेंट in this country to send his or her, I mean, a son or daughter for becoming a carpenter or a welder. वो हॉस्पिटलिटी के बिजनेस में भी जा सकता है, वो रिटेल के में भी जा सकता है। हमें अगर वो अमेजन शॉप जैसा कोई एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप कर सकता है, तो अमेजन डिलीवरी बॉय भी बन सकता है। हमें वहाँ उसका पूरा विज़न क्लियर करना पड़ेगा। अभी एज ए नेशन, एज ए सोसाइटी, मुझे लगता है कि स्किल को लेके हमारा अपना विज़न क्लियर नहीं है। हमें कंफ्यूज सोसाइटी है स्किल को लेके, और उसकी वजह से कभी हम उसको ITI बोलते हैं, कभी हम उसको पॉलिटेक्निक बोलते हैं, कभी हम वोकेशनल बोलते हैं, कभी हम सर्टिफिकेट कोर्स बोलते हैं। हम टोटलिटी में स्किल नहीं बोलते उसको, और वहीं हम फंस गए मुझको लगता है। हमें ग्रेजुएशन माने बच्चे जैसे जैसे ग्रेजुअली बड़े होते हैं, उनके अंदर जो बड़े हैं उनके अंदर समझना पड़ेगा कि ड्राइविंग भी स्किल है। उसको लगता है क्या करना है, गाड़ी चलानी आती है जी, मैं ड्राइविंग कर सकता हूँ। ड्राइविंग एक स्किल है। अच्छा, कुछ नौकरी नहीं मिल रही, सिक्योरिटी गार्ड की दिला दो जी। अच्छा, किसी दुकान पे नौकरी दिला दो। रिटेल शॉप एक स्किल है, किसी रेस्टोरेंट में लगवा दो। हॉस्पिटलिटी या वेटर के रूप में काम करना एक स्किल है। आप बात करो इस कमरे से बाहर निकल के लोगों से, वो वेटर का स्किल क्या होता है जी? वो तो वेटर की तो नौकरी है। तो वेटर होना एक स्किल हो सकता है। आपको हॉस्पिटलिटी के बिजनेस में, फाइनेंस और इन सब की तो हम आगे की बात करते हैं, बट ये छोटी छोटी चीज़ें स्किल हो सकती हैं। इसको लेके हमने क्लैरिटी एज ए नेशन बिल्डअप करने की कोशिश नहीं की, और मुझे लगता है उस कम्युनिकेशन की वॉर में हम लोग बहुत पीछे हैं, कम्युनिकेशन में बहुत पीछे हैं अभी। और जब हम स्किल इंडिया की बात करें, स्किल के फ्यूचर की बात करें, तो उस पर हमको बहुत ज़ोर दे के बात करनी पड़ेगी, और सबको सोचना पड़ेगा। इस कमरे में बैठे हुए लोगों से भी मैं बात करूं कि आंख बंद करके सोचिए कि 5 साल बाद के 10 स्किल्स क्या हो सकते हैं जो आज नहीं एग्जिस्ट करते हैं। शायद हमें प्रैक्टिस नहीं है सोचने की। जब हम स्किल की बात करेंगे तो फिर हम वहीं से शुरू करेंगे, वेल्डिंग, हम वहीं से शुरू करेंगे जी, असेंबलिंग, क्योंकि हमने ITI को उस तरह से ग्रो किया। आई एम नॉट सेइंग कि ITI की ज़रूरत नहीं है। आज दिल्ली में हम सीमेंस के साथ काम कर रहे हैं, मारुति के साथ काम कर रहे हैं, लेकिन साथ साथ वर्ल्ड क्लास स्किल सेंटर में खड़े होकर जब मैं अपने 12th क्लास बच्चे को हॉस्पिटलिटी की ट्रेनिंग देता हूँ, तो वो जाके सिंगापुर में नौकरी करने लगता है, वो ऑस्ट्रेलिया में नौकरी करने लगता है, उसको दुनिया के अच्छे हॉस्पिटलिटी रिटेल शॉप्स में, चेन्स में नौकरी मिल रही है। वो भी स्किल हो सकता है। एक सामान्य मल्टी स्टोर में खड़े होने की नौकरी भी ट्रेनिंग से मिल सकती है। ये माइंडसेट में नहीं है, और जब तक ये माइंडसेट में नहीं आएगा, I don't think we can actually talk about future of the skill in our country.
So the only person on the panel who may not have understood Manish fully is Sergio, but since Hindi is so much about using your hands, and so is Italian, I'm sure you understood every word that he said.
The passion that they show us.
Right, but essentially saying that really skills cannot be thought of just as the traditional ones of welding and carpentry, but we have to think about the new skills, the new era, the new world in front of us. That actually leads us directly into perhaps what's at the forefront in terms of innovation in skilling, and that's financial services. And Shikha, what's your take on this?
So let me just go back to your starting point on the need for jobs and where jobs might come in the future and where jobs might go away. So if we just look at the last 5 years and see what's been happening, what we're seeing clearly is that agriculture is giving up jobs, right? And I think, as we were saying earlier, we shouldn't resist that, because we need to improve productivity in agriculture. And if we have to do that, then we have to see agriculture grow without jobs. So how are we going to go and substitute those jobs, and where that might come from? I think if we look at the different segments, manufacturing, we've been creating jobs, but at a very slow pace. So relative to GDP growth of manufacturing, job creation has been slower. And I think, if I look forward, then given everything that's happening with robotics and all of that, manufacturing is also likely to become more and more capital intensive and less employment intensive. But having said that, I think markets are going to become important, and given that India is such a large market, and if 3D printing and some of the stuff comes in, then there can be a case for local-oriented manufacturing, which could end up creating jobs. But with IT and, where have jobs gotten created in the last 5 years? I think IT BPO has been a big source of job creation. Textiles has been, but has slowed down because some of the export problems that we've had in the textile sector. Hopefully, with the initiatives that policy has taken, and especially if we get more labor flexibility, textiles and leather could actually become a source of growth in the future. IT and BPO, automation is going to come in and take away some of the jobs that IT and BPO has created in the last few years. But equally, I think it's going to generate a lot more jobs. Because if we look at the future and we say data, machine learning are going to be key themes, then India has that basic skill set of data, maths, programming, and we can leverage that to become the next big hub of providing those services globally, provided we have digital infrastructure and we make sure that we are best in class as far as cybersecurity is concerned. So I think those are the two pieces of infrastructure that are needed to make that happen. The third thing where I think India has a natural advantage, which has probably not been fully tapped yet, is tourism, including health tourism. So if we look at the number of tourists India attracts relative to what South Africa attracts or Thailand attracts, it attracts basically the same number as Thailand, which is surprising given how small that country is and the kind of tourist destinations we can provide. So what do we need to get that done? I think the government may or may not have articulated it as sharply, but is actually doing a lot of things which can help tourism. So the whole Swachh Bharat, you need cleanliness, you need infrastructure, you need airports, airlines, transportation to make infrastructure happen, to make tourism happen. And on the healthcare front, again, we do get medical tourism, so we know that there is a case for that, but we don't get enough medical tourism from countries like Japan and Europe, which could be large markets for medical tourism, given that they have an aging population and cost of medical delivery is high there. And India has a natural advantage in terms of Ayurveda, yoga, alternate medicine, plus good medical capability. So I think from an opportunity perspective, that is, again, a very large opportunity. So IT, BPO, and tourism, healthcare, I think are large opportunities, and India is doing a bunch of stuff around both of those right now, but maybe a sharper focus to make sure that we focus on jobs there would help. From a banking perspective, we clearly see that, with data and automation, banking is going to become less employment intensive going forward. So we've seen that happening in the last few years, and probably we'll see more of that. But on the flip side, with digital and data becoming available, the market for financial services can expand dramatically. And we can get some of what is delivered by the informal sector today can actually come into the formal sector. And when it comes into the formal sector, you have more efficient availability of capital. So it grows the market, and it has the secondary impact of promoting entrepreneurship through more efficient capital delivery. So while we worry about jobs, and at Axis Bank, that's one of the themes that we are looking at, that what is the future of jobs and how might it impact India's growth opportunity, we also think that there are lots of silver linings out there. As I said, in IT, BPO, tourism, data, financial services, innovation around financial services, local markets. So for every challenge that's out there, there are a bundle of opportunities as well.
That's a very optimistic view, and I think you've really touched upon the leveraging possibilities, in particular, as you said, with the market for financial services expanding through more efficient delivery. You're going to be able to have so many more startups.
And Aadhaar has been a big enabler. And what we can do with Aadhaar and digital can actually kick off a lot of innovation, which we
So
can then
actually-
transport to the rest of the world.
So I actually had a discussion with Nandan Nilekani, who used to be the head of the Aadhaar apparatus when it was launched. He also happens to be the president of NCAER, so
Right.
we are very fortunate in having him. But that's exactly the point that he made. But talking about startups, let's go to two individuals who've really been part of that process. I want to turn to Anant Narayanan and maybe give us a sense of how the landscape has to change and how should it change?
Sure. So, I'll touch on the aspect of technology, right? As you just think about the 250 million, the folks that are coming in. I think technology is a huge enabler in job creation. If you take what we do, which is just e-commerce. E-commerce as an industry didn't really exist, 5-7 years ago. It started and now it's at scale. And I think it's just the beginning because I think it transforms how retail operates, right? So Myntra, by the way, not only is creating the 2,000 people who are actually the technology-driven folks, but it creates the 8,000 who are the service delivery agents, to your point, right? But what's interesting there is that all of it is technology-enabled. Our service delivery agent today actually operates on an app. He has a mobile phone. Smartphones are coming in vogue, right? I think we have 350 million smartphones in India. So he actually operates on a smartphone, learns from a smartphone. So I think technology creates jobs. That's one example. The other is, by the way, just the seller ecosystem that Flipkart and Amazon have created. There are so many sellers now that actually have no access, and it provides access and distribution and an ability for small businesses to scale. So I think that's the second type of job creation. So I think if I take the next 5, 7, 10-year view, I think entire industries and jobs will get created. I think using technology as an enabler. I think there are many examples, Uber, Ola, Flipkart, right? All of these will create large number of jobs, and there are large number of secondary jobs. So if you just take Myntra, not only are we creating direct jobs, we are also creating manufacturing jobs because 20% of what we do is private label. And that, by the way, has a lot of manufacturing associated with it, and all of that is made locally, right? So there's a lot of manufacturing that actually also, as commerce and retail increase, there's a lot of secondary job creation that happens in services as well as in manufacturing. But all of it happened differently. Now, that's the nearer term view. If I take a 10-year view, however, I think technology will change how we perceive and do our jobs. I think machine learning, AI, all will become much more standard. I'll give you an example. Today, if you take either the buying function in retail, or if you take the job of a designer, designing a set of clothes, now that's changing, right? So in Myntra, by the way, we are now using machine algorithms to say what a t-shirt should be, right? Or what a pair of jeans should be. Now that's actually, by the way, changing what a role of a designer is. Therefore, I think as you think about skills, it's important to say, are we actually imbibing learnability? Because I think over a period of a career, things will change dramatically for you and you can't predict it. So what you have to imbibe in schools, in colleges, is a measure of learnability, saying, are you actually teaching learnability? And I think that's an important aspect of it. The second is just, I think, what the machine learning can't take away, I think, is a combination of EQ, people skills, and the ability to logically derive insights from data. So are we doing enough of that in our schools to teach people and upskill them, right? So 2 points. One is, I think, lots of job creation through technology and new industries getting created. Second is, given the uncertainty of it and the fact that machine learning and AI will become big, how do you change the skills around learnability is the other aspect. The third, just last point I'll make is, the average age of a Myntra employee is 24 to 25, right? They don't think of jobs as careers. I mean, the word career, it's like a jungle gym as opposed to a career ladder, right? So, and people think of life in 1.5-year terms, right? Not in 5-year, 10-year terms, right? I think one interesting factoid is the average tenure of a company is half, of an employee in a company is half the age of a company. So if you have a 4-year-old company, you only have a 2-year sort of view to that career, right? So you have to think very differently about how you skill them. They don't learn in classrooms. They learn much more digitally. They learn much more on an as-needed basis. So all of our learning is on an app, right, where we actually drip feed people what's actually required. There's a lot more interactive things that actually happen. And this, by the way, is not at the higher end. It's actually at our service delivery agents. Our service delivery agents training programs every day get through apps. So you actually you don't take them out of the job, but you do it very differently, right? So I think just learnability of this group of people, the millennials, will be very different. And therefore, for all of us, I think we have to think deeply about how do we actually train them. And that part will also be very technology enabled, in my view.
So these are very, very useful thoughts, because I think the learnability is directly tied to employability, which is where the big gap currently exists.
Yeah.
Firms can't get the right kinds of young people to join them. The young people can't find the jobs that they are trained for. Let me turn to Sergio and ask for his sense of India's challenges from his global perspective.
Yeah. First of all, I think that this is a nice challenge. If I see what is happening in Europe, where the main issue is the aging of population and is the opposite problem, is a really nice challenge, because we are speaking about young generation, we are speaking about the future. Our role as stakeholders in this kind of opportunity is to play the right role in this kind of game. And when I speak about stakeholders, I speak about company, institution, schools, and government. The market needs flexibility, and the candidates needs employability. These are the two key points. The employability depends on the fact that school has to be more integrated with the labor market, as you say. The distance today, and this is not related just to India, this is everywhere the same point, the distance between the schools, the education, and the labor market is becoming bigger. And with this, exactly what you say, in the next 10 years, probably there will be 60% of the job that we don't know today what will be. And the development of the digital is a clear example. 3 years ago, 5 years ago, probably automotive engineers was looking for a job in a car company. Today, the main competitor of car company is Google, you know, and this is the reality. So the employability is a key fact for granting to the young generation the future, and we have to play the role as a company, as school. More collaboration, more clarity, more understanding of what is happening in the labor market from all these stakeholders. The other point is the flexibility. The competitiveness of India today is mainly based on the cost of the labor market. But if we see the history of all the big development, and when I speak big development, I'm not speaking about the size of the big development in India, but other experience. And we come back to 25 years ago, what's happening in Eastern Europe, for example. Again, smaller dimension respect India, but the same concept was that all the companies were moving there for the cost of the labor. But the cost of the labor, by definition, will increase. So the flexibility is the right point for granting competitiveness of the company and of the countries. And how we can work on this is part of the government to grant flexibility. And when I speak about flexibility, being part of the major staffing company in the world, I'm not speaking about only the opportunity for company to be flexible in terms of workforce, but to grant equal treatment of payment for the salary of the flexible workforce. Mm-hmm. We are working in all the countries for having the equal treatment of salary for the flexible workforce and the permanent person. So what we call in Italy was the flex security, flexibility for companies, security for people and for the workers. This point is the key point. The other point that is important related to the development and for candidates is related to the training, to the skill up, okay? How we can skill up. And again, all the stakeholders can play a key role in these sectors. As an example, in Italy, in most of the European countries, the government, when it was regulating the flexible workforce and the labor market, was obliging companies like Adecco to spend a percentage of the salary of the people in training, okay? Not keeping the salary from the people, but adding to the salary a training. And this is a mandatory part. Just for give you an idea, in the last 5 years, Adecco invests more than 645 million in training for skilling up our associate. Clearly, we are a private company. We have an objective for doing that, but we are helping to skill up the candidates and to grant more employability to that. So these are the key words. The other point that could be interesting is related to the black market, the black labor market or gray labor market, that is a real competitor for granting competitiveness in the countries. You know, company, they like to have very transparent and clear labor legislation, and company like Adecco, staffing companies, all the sectors, is granting to clean up this kind of potential risk. And the other point, just for giving you an example, in India we have 100,000 associate workers every day that we delegate in our client, and we don't pay these people through check or cash. We are just paying through bank account. So we are opening bank account. And when you open bank account, technically you can track everything. And this is the role that we play for helping the employability and the security of the workers.
Sure. Well, that's a very useful perspective. Flexibility as well as employability, and narrowing the gap between the school and the workforce. Akshay, as I think you're the youngest on this panel, but obviously with a lot of punch in having got to where you have to. Either your personal experience or LinkedIn being one of the world's largest platforms for the meeting place of skills and jobs. What's your take?
Yeah, so a lot of really amazing things have been covered. I'll start with the personal story, I think. So I was born and brought up in Ahmedabad, and I left about 13 years ago to go to the US to study, to kind of pursue my college education. And I just moved back this year to head LinkedIn in India. And because I was gone for so long, I figured it would be a good opportunity to just reconnect with the country. Because I was starting to build products for India, I decided to kind of go on a trip across India, and the team decided to do a research trip. You know, we went to Nasik in the west, we went to Meerut, not too far from here, we went to Durgapur in the east, and we went to Devangad in the south. And the idea was to just go out there and meet college students. And it wasn't to convince them to join LinkedIn, it was just to go out there and observe and experience how they lived, how they spend their time in colleges, and how they got their first job. And as I was talking to these college students, to me, like, it felt like a Swadesh movie-like moment, where I truly understood the gravity of the problem this country faces. A lot of these college students have spent all of their family's fortunes for getting a college degree, but are now struggling to get a job. And the thing is, it's not just them. It's not just the college students I met. India's producing 8 million college graduates every year, and there's been studies which have shown that more than half of them are unemployable. And so I think, to me, I think that was an eye-opener. And I think if you extend that to some of the new programs we've launched with Skills India, I think although it's a step in the right direction, I think if you actually talk to all the people who got skilled, I think most of them will tell you that they're actually having a tough problem getting a gig or getting an opportunity. And then it's the people in this room, like, we all actually have a job. And there's a study that came out this week that said, the World Bank report said that 69% of jobs in India are threatened by automation. And so I'm sorry to start this morning on an ominous note, but we have a problem where college students are getting a college degree but not getting a job. People are getting skilled but not getting a gig. And then people who actually have jobs are now threatened by automation. Having said that, there have been some really encouraging things I've seen in the last couple of months. So I think, kind of building on what Anand was saying in terms of technology, I think we built a platform that we launched about 3 weeks ago called Placements. And the whole idea of Placements was to really democratize opportunity for all college students in India. And so the idea is that it's an online assessment test that people can take on Placements. And whether you're a college student in IIT Delhi or whether you're a college student in the most interior parts of India, in Bihar or Assam or wherever, you can take the same standardized test, and that test connects you to thousands of openings that exist in companies like Samsung, Amazon, HCL, and a bunch of others, right?
I see.
And so in 3 weeks, we've gotten 2.5 lakhs applications. And I can't wait for the next couple of weeks to find out like some of the people who live in the remote parts of India actually getting the best jobs that are available in this country, right? So that's one. Secondly, I think we're now actually engaging in a very meaningful dialogue with the government because LinkedIn actually sees, on a daily basis, LinkedIn India has about 500,000 active jobs. So we actually have a pretty good view of where the demand side looks like, where the jobs exist. And so we can really help the governments, city governments or state governments, really help figure out for that state, how should they be thinking about skilling their people? Where are the jobs for that state? And how can they be figuring out that the skilling program is in the right direction, to Manisha's point as well. And then finally, I think the most amazing thing that's happening in this country is that more and more people are actually have broadband internet connection on their fingertips. And so the idea that you can now access learning content wherever you are, LinkedIn has a learning program with the acquisition of Lynda, but actually there's some amazing platforms like Coursera, Udacity that people can really tap into and really be thinking about upskilling every day so that they're prepared for future jobs is going to be a game changer, right? So in summary, I think to me, I think the college degree is not an end. I think skilling is also not an end. I think these are all means to an opportunity where people can have stable jobs. And so imagine a world where, imagine a world where companies are working closely with the colleges and vocational institutes to really drive a curriculum that can help them actually employ the right people. I think that can truly transform the Indian economy. And that's kind of what we're focused on as well.
I'm just pausing to think about the potential that you've laid out for digital, not just crowding out jobs, but transforming the way in which young people relate to the workforce and to employment opportunities. And it goes to Anand's point about learnability, that if in schools we can actually build that kind of learnability rather than learning by rote and passing to curriculum requirements, then we have an agile workforce that is able precisely to take advantage of the opportunities that we've been talking about. Manisha, I'm going to go back to you for just a minute and ask in particular, how is Delhi government thinking about these kinds of opportunities?
I think in last 1.5 years, I have been trying to focus on learnability because many times I find that we teach and just teach. We don't make them learn. Sometimes we make them learn, but just make them learn. There is no learnability because it's an entirely different skill that we need in every human being. And that's why we are lacking in our schools, in our skills training centers, engineering centers, everywhere, and in our policies as a leader, if I say. I was just thinking while hearing them that very common skill that's needed around us is पूजा पाठ का skill. Everybody needs, हम सब लोग कम से कम हिंदुस्तान में इस तरह के जीते हैं कि हमारे अगर नौकरी में पहली नौकरी के बाद मोटरसाइकिल लेता है लड़का, उसके लिए भी एक पंडित चाहिए उसका शुरुआत करने के लिए. And there are schools and colleges who are offering these courses these days, Vedic colleges, and there are certain universities are there, Maharishi universities, and some Haridwar universities are offering courses in there. Fantastic. But what's the problem? Learning, either teaching or learning is there, some part of learning, but learnability is not there. I heard some of the pandits are now being more innovative based on their learnability. वो लोग क्योंकि दिल्ली जैसे शहर में अब आप अपने घर में हवन कुंड नहीं रखते हो, आपको पता नहीं दूब घास कहाँ से मिलेगी, आपको कच्चा दूध कहाँ से मिलेगा. So they offer the package. I heard while coming here, I heard about a पंडित जी who offers the space also. बोले आपको अपना घर गंदा करने की जरूरत नहीं है, मैं 20-25 लोगों का हवन अपने ही करा दूंगा, एक संस्कार अपने ही करा दूंगा. This is the learnability because एक बड़ी चीज़ जो सब लोगों से मुझे निकल के समझ में I noted it कि अभी हम मार्केट, हम जब जॉब्स की बात करते हैं, स्किल ट्रेनिंग की बात करते हैं, वी टॉक अबाउट मार्केट. हमारे इस थिंकिंग पैटर्न से सोसाइटी गायब है. बिकॉज नीड तो सोसाइटी में, आज बच्चा पढ़ना चाहता है, फैमिली बाहर जाना चाहती है तो घिच घिच करके मार्केटिंग की जगह घूमना चाहती है. तो हेयर द कंपनीज जो उसको कहती हैं अच्छा तुम घूमो एंजॉय करो, हम आपको डेली नीड्स जो हैं घर डिलीवर करा देंगे. सो दिस इज अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ सोसाइटी, इट्स नॉट मार्केट, it's society. आप सोसाइटी को समझ रहे हैं, उसकी ज़रूरत को समझ रहे हैं, उसमें से जॉब क्रिएट कर रहे हैं, उसमें से जॉब निकालने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. मैं एक छोटा सा डेटा आपके सामने रखना चाहता हूँ, बिकॉज अभी हमारी सारी बातचीत एक एक्सट्रीम से शुरू होती है, जॉब्स, मार्केट, फ्यूचर, स्किल का फ्यूचर क्या है. एक दूसरा मैं आपके सामने डेटा के साथ रखना चाहता हूँ. दिल्ली के स्कूल से, आई थिंक यू गेव सम फिगर अबाउट नेशनल, दिल्ली के स्कूल से हर साल 2.5 लाख बच्चे पास आउट होते हैं, स्कूल्स से, ओनली स्कूल्स. और उन 2.5 लाख बच्चों में से जब हम उनसे बात करते हैं, आपको कहाँ जाना है, एवरीबडी वांट एडमिशन इन DU और DTU और ITI, आई मीन IIT एंड ऑल बिग शॉर्ट्स इंस्टीट्यूट्स. उसके बाद इन सारा मिला के हमारे पास में 1,10,000 की सीट्स हैं, इनटेक सारा मिला के, इंक्लूडिंग माई ITIs एंड ऑल. अब बाकी के 1,40,000 बच्चों को कहाँ लेके जाऊँ? उनको हम कोई ट्रेनिंग दे देंगे. इन लास्ट आई वाइंड अप इन वन ऑफ द एग्जाम्पल, उनको कहीं भेज देते हैं हम, कोई छोटी मोटी शकरपुर में ट्रेनिंग के लिए भेज दिया, कहीं भेज दिया. मैं एक अपनी ITI में ट्रेनिंग के लिए गया, विजिट के लिए गया. वहाँ आई फाउंड वेरी यंग एनर्जेटिक गाइज असेंबलिंग LED बल्ब्स विथ फुल कॉन्फिडेंस. हम इतना कर सकते हैं, दिन में इतना प्रोडक्शन कर सकते हैं. आई सेड व्हाट आर यू डूइंग विद दैट? हमने सब बस ओपन किया हुआ है, एनीबडी कैन कम एंड बाय अस, और हमारी गारंटी है कि कोई हम खराब हो जाएगा तो हम वापस यहाँ से रिप्लेस कर देंगे. सो आई सेड दिवाली इज नेक्स्ट डोर, व्हाई डोंट यू मार्केट इट? सो दैट एलिमेंट ऑफ वैल्यू एडिशन, जो मैंने पंडित के एग्जाम्पल में बोला, जो IT के वैल्यू एडिशन नहीं है. हम अगर कोई स्किल सिखा रहे हैं तो स्किल सिखा के छोड़ दे रहे हैं. उसका वैल्यू एडिशन कैसे करना है उसमें, और सोसाइटी से कैसे जोड़ना है, वो लिंक खत्म हो जाता है. वो लर्नेबिलिटी है, उसको अगर हम किसी तरह से इंश्योर कर लें, एंड वी आर ट्राइंग टू डू इट.
Excellent. Before I open it up, and I want to very much open it up to the audience, and I'll just do that in a minute. But going back, Anand, to the kinds of applications you were talking about, and that Akshay also was referring to, that will narrow the distance between the school and the workplace and lead to continuous lifelong learning. Are we doing enough? Are we investing enough? What is the ecosystem? What's the policy framework that can promote that?
So I think clearly there is a lot more to do. I don't think we're doing enough. My sense, by the way, is I think if you just think about education itself, I think you already touched on learnability. I think education and thinking of a formal college degree, I think in 10 years from now will not be how we think about it, right? I think it's a set of what skills have you actually learned and what skills will you continue to learn. The base infrastructure without any help from anybody else, just because of technology exists, which is the 350 million smartphones and the broadband access actually that you were talking about. I think what we need is to encourage more entrepreneurship and ideas around people who can create real businesses around it. I think you need a policy framework for it. You basically need to say, how do I create companies that actually take education as a business and create very efficient lifelong learning? Because I think, getting innovation and business and market and capital in there is needed. That part, I think there's so much more to do, right? And I think it has to be done in local languages. It has to be able to reach every part of India. I think there is a lot. There's a market there. The base infrastructure, unlike physical infrastructure, it's digital infrastructure that exists.
Right.
Aadhaar now, I think, will be another big enabler of it.
Yes.
So I think the building blocks exist. What is needed is a framework on top, and actually people investing capital, and there's a policy framework on top that actually allows this industry to be built. And I think the next 5 years will be critical. If you build this industry, I think you'll solve a lot of learnability problems, right? In terms of how you upskill, and you upskill a large number of people, right?
Shikha, crucial role of finance in this as an enabler, and your ability and your banking sector's ability to make this kind of venture capital available, even in small drips and drabs, that can allow this kind of entrepreneurship. Any thoughts on that?
So I just want to talk about two things that we at Axis Bank are trying to do. One, we talked about, I really liked the story that Akshay was telling around his travel around the country.
I liked it too, especially from a fellow Gujarati.
Yeah. So, I joined the bank in 2009, and one of the things that Axis had done was we had a foundation well before CSR became fashion. It was set up in 2006, and we were contributing 1% of our profits towards CSR activities. And at that time, the focus of our CSR was around education. And what hit me at that point of time was that a lot of these guys got educated, and after that, they didn't get jobs. So we were actually adding to frustration because we were increasing the pool of educated unemployed. So we changed the focus of what the foundation was going to impact. And we moved from education to livelihoods. And we took a goal that we want to catalyze 1 million livelihoods in a 5-year period. And at that point of time, we didn't have an idea of how we were going to do that or what we were going to do. But over the last 4 or 5 years, we've run a lot of little pilots with NGOs. So we don't do it directly, but we work with NGOs who work in that field. And the outcome of that has been very interesting because we're seeing lots of different things which have had an impact, created livelihoods, increased incomes for people. And again, the goal we had taken was the people we impact, we should measure what their income was before the program started and what their income was 2 years later. So was there a sustainable impact on income? And there are some agricultural type stuff which is done very well. There is crafts kind of stuff which is done very well. And there is some skilling,
Sure.
So the welding, carpentry, construction, driving, those kinds of skills. So we've actually found there are different programs that have worked. There are some programs which have worked around water conservation and agricultural productivity. There are other programs which have worked around some of the mass low-end skills.
So this is one area where I think, it brings up a very important point. We need to be piloting a lot of different things.
Exactly.
And rather than rushing to scale, we need to actually learn from some of
Exactly.
these
So what we
piloting.
like about that program is that we went about scientifically measuring impact and saying we'll run 30 programs, but we will scale the 10 which have maximum impact. The other interesting story I want to just spend a minute on is microfinance. So as banks, we don't think of banks doing microfinance. But again, we went into microfinance about 3 years ago. And Aadhaar and technology has allowed a bank like us to get into it, which otherwise would have been very difficult from a reach and cost perspective. And I went recently, after we had run this stuff for 1.5 years, to one of the earliest places that we started microfinance. And the initial round of funding we do is just about 18,000 rupees. It's not a lot of money. And then depending upon how the person is done with that first round of 18,000 rupees, then the next time they can be qualified to get 30,000 rupees. And some of the stories there were amazing stories. So there's a woman who had taken a loan of 18,000 18 months ago. And she started with just setting up a village shop. And that village shop did well. And then she set up a sewing machine to start to do sewing because that was the other need of the village. And then with that, she started doing tailoring classes. And then she said, lots of marriages and people are getting aspirational. So she started a beauty parlor. And today she earns 35,000 rupees a month. And this was with an 18,000. So, and she's graduated into becoming the next higher level of borrower. What it's done is not just graduated her, but she's a role model then for the village and the villages around. Sure. And there are lots of other women who want to come and follow that. So I liked what Mr. Sisodia was saying, that look, one of the ways to change society is, are we creating the right role models? So how do we go out there and change some of this issue around learnability, entrepreneurship? Can we just create a whole lot of new role models? Lots of people say, how has ICICI brought so many women into financial services? You have 1 or 2 role models and then a lot of others follow through. So I think just put out there the 10, 15 role models based on what we think are going to be the jobs of the future and the entrepreneurship capabilities of the future. And the other thing I liked about what Akshay said was democratize opportunities. I think that helps us to take advantage of our demographic dividend, which can otherwise become a curse. So if we have those people, we have to make sure we marry them well to the opportunities.
Actually, hold your horses just now, because I want to bring the audience in. I think it's high time we actually engage with them. They've been sitting patiently, and I have so many hands up. So, the rules of the game. No long-winded comments, please. Just, very quick. Please identify yourself. I don't know if you need microphones or if they have other kinds of apparatus in the room. I'm going to start with this gentleman here on my extreme right, and less than a minute, please.
Yeah, my name is Devendra Jani. I'm a global shaper. Traditionally in India, kids at the age of 6 or 7 knew how to do work with their parents doing the same, how a furnace works as a goldsmith, do welding and stuff. But our Indian education today, which is a copy of the Western education, completely drains your mind till you are 17 or 18. Don't teach you any skill, teaches you how to sit and do a job. And then they have a very big question, what I do after my 10th grade, because I haven't acquired any skill. And unfortunately, it's a mindset that you're only supposed to acquire skill if you score less in your 10th grade, or you're supposed to do all the carpentry or other stuff, only if you don't study well. Can we have in our education curriculum skill building at the very age when the kids get into school, so that they know what are the options right from the early age, as well as the skill building starts while they have the learning capabilities in their initial age?
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure that I'm geographically correct. But let me start with the lady on the extreme. Oh, I see. Do you count yourselves amongst them? I see. Please, I'll come to you in a second.
So I'm Renu. I head Gruha in India, which is a bathroom fittings company. Our biggest challenge is around plumbing, because I relate to what you said. Very briefly, we've been talking about demand and supply gap. We're talking about digital disruption. We're talking about placements. So we are assuming a basic level of education, and we are also assuming that people are digitally savvy. I'm talking of a shorter term, let's say a decade from now. And then, and they will get onto platforms, they will recognize this. From my point of view, education to entrepreneurship is what India should only work on. So all our Skill India initiatives should be around that. Carpentry, plumbing, puja, whatever. I mean, it has to give those thoughts, so I'm just adding on so you can answer together, that what are we doing to ensure that each child learns as he goes along, and then he or she makes a choice later about a profession which may not be a job at a corporate. It can be an entrepreneurship, an aggregator, a vendor, a papad, industry, a sewing machine, whatever. So we regard these professions as equitable and respectful. I think that's a societal change we need to do.
Thank you very much. I think it's a very profound thought. The gentleman here in the center, please identify yourself.
I'm glad. I was going to say that you should all introduce ourselves. I'm Madhur Bajaj. I'm Vice Chairman of Bajaj Auto. Just like in business, we decide our capacity building, how many vehicles to make, etc., based on the demand. And we take into consideration segments where we are not, so we're going to make a new model, so we create that much more capacity. Similarly, why can't we have an integrated package where we say that, okay, where will the demand either come from, be created, it's there. Tourism, for example, is a new demand job creator. As many foreign tourists come here which visit Eiffel Tower, 8 million, okay. I mean, it's tremendous potential. Once you have those figures, and not only in India, I'm talking about global, and if a country requires people and we have the skills, believe me, the visa regime will be nothing. I mean, they will see that the visa regime does not stop people from going there to get those jobs. Then have the skilling based on the demand, which we feel is going to be there in the future. So it's a complicated thing. It's not an easy thing, because you've got to think futuristic as to where will the demand come from, how can we create those extra demands, etc., and how do we prepare skilling by way of the right teachers who can do the skilling, so that therefore we have a complete package.
Okay. Gentleman here.
Thank you. It's a very interesting conversation. I'm Ben Pinney with Johnson Controls. Construction trades have come up a couple of times, and a hidden part of China's sustained growth over the past 20 years has been the management of the absorption of a very large tens and tens of millions of people from surplus agricultural labor into semi-skilled construction trades. And as a part of that, the management of that very large itinerant workforce. And that has required, we talk about agility a lot in relationship to information technology, managing a different kind of agility in the labor force. And I would love to hear how folks think about infrastructure building as a key driver of jobs and social stability.
No, I'm very glad you brought that up, because clearly we have a huge infrastructure deficit. And you mentioned Swachh Bharat. I don't know, one of you mentioned Swachh Bharat as, it creates a public good, in clean urban cities, but it creates huge employment. And you could have vacuuming machines do the same, but I think we can avoid that level of capitalization. So I think that's a very important point. In China, from my understanding, at the 8th grade, students make a choice between completing their formal education or going to vocational. 50% of students choose the vocational. We need to change our thinking. Gentlemen here in the front. We'll come back at the end and have a final round of contributions from you.
Sudhir from Thomson Reuters. I just want to make a point on the policy making side. When we are building programs like Skill India and this, I hope we have stakeholders like this, part of the ecosystem, who are engaged in policy making, who are engaged in developing these programs, because I'm not too sure if that is the case. Because that itself otherwise is a huge gap, that what we are building and what for. Because we are building for 15 years, 20 years, 25 years from now. Mm-hmm. So are we having right stakeholder? I'm not too sure. So I'm putting my perspective in the policy making. We need, I think, stakeholders like this through an appropriate platform. Thank you.
Mr. Sisodia can appoint all of us to his skilling task force for them.
All are welcome. Let's work together.
Okay, lady here has been waiting very patiently. Just wait for the microphone, please. You're on camera.
Shalini Pillai from KPMG. And some great points today in terms of learnability and agility. But I'd like to touch upon, since we have a large part of corporate India sitting here and we're talking of imbibing learnability at early stages, if we could also touch upon agility that we're seeing in the corporate world, because today we still recruit to jobs. We still recruit for job descriptions and roles. What are we doing about agility and openness in terms of flexibility when we're reviewing and assessing talent? And not really insisting on fitments to roles and boxes and job descriptions. Mm-hmm. Because there's an onus on corporate India to allow for this flexibility and employability if we are more agile and open in the way one is looking at it. So I'd love to hear some thoughts from the corporate side as well.
No, it's a very important point. So we are going to probably have to wind up in about 5 minutes, and I have a real choice between letting my panelists come back and cater to the many large number of hands I still see up. I'm going to turn to the gentleman in the far back because I need to make sure that we cover everybody. I'll then see if we can have 5 minutes with the panel. Yes, please.
Hi,
and please keep it short.
I represent Manpower Group, the largest employers in India right now, from contract staffing as well as permanent. We've been seeing a lot of skill gaps in the last 10 years. I've been with this organization. But recently we have done some things which I wanted to highlight to you guys. One thing is a short-term perspective of getting people to jobs. And the second is to have a long-term perspective. Short-term, we need to understand. I addressed NSTC a few days back, and we had a
National Skill Development
Council. Yes. And we also understood that whatever trainings we are doing are really not the right, kind of creating the skill sets to the jobs in demand that we see. So we proposed some short-term skilling initiatives, which we have recently done in Bangalore. We have established our own skilling academy there in collaboration with the university. You will not believe me, 97% success rate and 1,000 kids on the job in 4 months, full-time employment with us. Fantastic. And 55% diversity. This we did with a client-committed approach. As I heard some of the friends from corporate India, they all know what they want. And if they all, as I said, in the policy making, they're all together, and they give the demands to all the people, I think that'll be a great thing to do.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to have to cut out the questions from the audience. I'm so sorry I have to do that, but I think we have to give our panelists. So I'm going to go back in reverse order and start with Akshay.
About just...
Well, you've heard a lot of questions. You wanted to come in.
There's a lot of interesting ideas. So
Pick one.
I think I really kind of resonated with the idea of teaching entrepreneurship as one of the things. And so I think when we think about skills, we think a lot about like hard skills, like whether it's carpenter or maybe like learning how to do accounting and so on. I don't think we spend as much time thinking about soft skills. I think one of the things I noticed when I was on the field is that you can actually get someone to, like, let's say, program really well. But that same person, when he or she's actually interviewing with candidates, he may actually not get the job because he's not able to kind of have those soft skills to actually complete it, right? And so the idea that we have to think a lot about what kind of soft skills we're providing or we're teaching. And one of the kind of more radical ideas that I think, think about a world where we can actually teach our kids compassion and empathy at a very early age, so that they can actually see what kind of problems exist and they kind of want to go out and actually solve those problems.
Excellent thought. Sergio?
Very
quickly.
I really appreciate all the comments around. And I think that if we can summarize, it's important, and India is doing a lot of investment in infrastructure, and I agree with you, we need all infrastructure for developing the countries. But in the same time, we have to invest in human capital. We only the infrastructure cannot sustain the development. We need people. We need the right talent. And I agree with you when the selection of people, most of the selection of people is coming from the attitude of the people. So on the soft skills and not on the hard skills. So even as a positive message for the young population, they have to be prepared. But even it's not enough to be prepared, but it's important to be ready and flexible in front of the labor opportunities.
Anant, just a quick word.
I'll stick with learnability. Learnability is a skill. In Myntra, at least, we have a way of assessing people on learnability based on experience, based on ideas that they've had. So it's a framework. You can both assess it and you can develop it. So I think you need to do that at scale.
Shikha.
So I'm going to have two that I want to talk about. One is, it's important for us to have a blueprint of where jobs will come 10, 15 years, maybe 15 years from now, and be very clear about where those jobs are, whether it's tourism or whatever else comes up, or construction. The second thing we then need to do is marry that marketplace of where jobs will come from to the education system. I think our education system puts too much load on children today, and too much load in terms of rote and memory, and too little emphasis on practical. So I would actually reduce the curriculum in schools, starting from the 10th standard onwards, dramatically, and instead substitute it with saying you have to go out there and do summer trainings. You have to start doing summer trainings from 8th standard onwards, so that you get exposed to different skill areas, and you figure out, between that 10th and 12th standard, what you really want to do. So practically, you change the orientation from rote and memory
to
learnability and application.
Okay. Last word, Manish.
Great. Just to inform you कि हमने दिल्ली के स्कूल्स में 25% सिलेबस क्लास 8 तक कम कर दिया है, एंड CBSE से वी आर स्ट्रगलिंग विद कि भैया हमारी बात मान लो, कम से कम हमें दिल्ली में करने दो, बाकी जगह के लिए आप करते रहो. हम लोग अगले साल से प्रोबेबली वी आर स्टार्टिंग अप विद न्यू स्किल यूनिवर्सिटी, एंड इसमें आई एम फोकसिंग ऑन वन हैंड डिफरेंट स्किल्स, न्यू skills and research on skills, but simultaneously I'm focusing on training of trainers also, because that's a bigger problem. And I've experienced this while I met Dr. Kalam, late Dr. Kalam, and with some of my officers, and he said, "Aapko 2 certificate dene chahiye." That was his famous line. So I said, "Sir, yes." So my secretary and some of my officers in education department were there, and they said, "Sir, हम तो दे रहे हैं, 200 स्कूल्स में हमने वोकेशनल कोर्सेज शुरू किए हुए हैं." सो आई वाज अ न्यू मिनिस्टर दैट टाइम. आई सेड आई वाज नॉट अवेयर हम क्या कर रहे हैं, क्या नहीं कर रहे हैं इतना. तो आई सेड फाइन, आई विल चेक इट. तो वन फाइन डे आई वेंट टू ए स्कूल. आई एम इनफेमस फॉर माई सरप्राइज विजिट्स इन माई स्कूल्स, बट स्टिल वहाँ जाके मैंने देखा, ओकेजनली मैं क्लास में गया, वहाँ पे टूरिज़्म पढ़ाया जा रहा था 12th क्लास में, और वो टूरिज़्म 11th में भी पढ़ाया गया था. तो मैंने ऐसी बच्चों से पूछा, क्या पढ़ाया बच्चों? तो एवरीबडी टुक आउट द नोटबुक, 5-7 पेजेस डेफिनेशंस के, हॉलीडे टूरिज्म क्या होता है, पैकेज टूरिज्म क्या होता है, सब कुछ लिखा हुआ था. मैंने पूछा, आपको कभी लेके जाते हैं बाहर? हाँ, एक बार बस में लेके जाते हैं, कुतुब मीनार दिखाने लेके गए थे. सो कुतुब मीनार दिखाने से टूरिज्म सीख सकता है? टूरिज्म इंडस्ट्री का कोई आदमी आता है क्या? कुछ मतलब अभी हमें पता ही नहीं है कि टूरिज्म पढ़ाना कैसे है, और हम फॉर्मेलिटी के नाम पे अपने 200 स्कूल्स में भी 50 स्कूल्स में टूरिज्म पढ़ा रहे हैं, ब्यूटी पढ़ा रहे हैं, मतलब इतने सारे कोर्सेज पढ़ा रहे हैं, सब फॉर्मेलिटी कर रहे हैं. लाइक यू सेड, वो रीडेबिलिटी लर्नेबिलिटी नहीं है। तो वो जब तक हम टीचर्स ट्रेनिंग या ट्रेनर्स ट्रेनिंग पे फोकस नहीं करेंगे, इंसिडेंटली आज सुबह यहाँ आने से पहले सिंगापुर के PM यहाँ आए हुए थे 2 दिन पहले, तो हम लोग एक सिंगापुर गवर्नमेंट के साथ में मिलकर वर्ल्ड क्लास स्किल सेंटर चला रहे हैं। तो वहाँ की एक जर्नलिस्ट मुझसे बात कर रही थी, उसका बार बार क्वेश्चन ये था, आपने सिंगापुर से क्या सीखा? मैंने कहा हमने ट्रेनर्स ट्रेनिंग कराया। नहीं सीखा क्या लेकिन? हाउ डू आई टेल हर कि हमारी ट्रेनिंग, ट्रेनर्स ट्रेनिंग और सिंगापुर से आए हुए मेरे ट्रेनर्स की ट्रेनिंग में कितना अंतर है? एंड दैट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, क्योंकि वो शायद ट्रेनर्स ट्रेनिंग पे हमें बहुत फोकस करना पड़ेगा, एंड दैट विल, द फ्यूचर विल डिपेंड ऑन दैट।
Well, this is a most interesting session. I'm absolutely loath to end it, but time is of the essence, and so we're coming to a close to a very useful and I think very insightful dialogue. I want to thank all my panelists, and I want to thank all of you for being engaged and participating so well. Thank you.